The morning sun filtered through the crystalline dome of the Galactic Military Academy's main training hall, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. Tyler Grant stood near the edge of the room, adjusting the straps on his training gear. Around him, cadets from dozens of different species chatted in clusters, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, hums, and melodic tones that still felt foreign to his ears even after 6 months at the academy. Tyler was one of only 3 humans in a class of 200 cadets. Earth had joined the Galactic Coalition just 5 years ago, and spots at the prestigious military academy were highly sought after. Most species had been part of the coalition for centuries. Humans were the newcomers, the outsiders, the primitives from a Class 12 death world that most civilized species wouldn't dare to visit. A Valkyrie cadet named Shin glided past, his 6 limbs moving with fluid grace. He was tall and slender, his skin a pale blue that shimmered under the dome's light. Shin didn't look at Tyler directly, but his voice carried clearly across the room as he spoke to his friends. I heard the instructors had to lower the academic standards just to let the humans pass the entrance exams, Shin said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Political quotas. The coalition wanted to appear inclusive. Several cadets laughed. Tyler kept his expression neutral and continued checking his gear. He had heard worse in the past months. The whispers in the corridors, the way some instructors seemed surprised when he answered questions correctly, the subtle exclusion from study groups. He had learned to ignore most of it. A Thernian cadet with 4 eyes and crystalline skin chittered something in her native language. Shin responded with a gesture that Tyler had learned meant agreement or amusement among Valkyrie. Deathworlders, another alien muttered, a term that was technically accurate but carried an edge of disgust the way some species used it. Earth's high gravity, aggressive predators, extreme weather and constant natural disasters made it one of the more dangerous habitable planets in known space. Most coalition species evolved on gentler worlds where cooperation came naturally because survival was easier. Tyler finished with his gear and walked toward the center of the training hall where Instructor Kale stood waiting. Kale was a Rendathi, a species known for their tactical brilliance and 4 arms that could manipulate weapons with impressive dexterity. The instructor's orange skin was marked with service ribbons and patterns that indicated decades of military experience. Attention cadets, Kale's voice boomed across the hall. The chatter died down immediately. Today we begin practical combat assessment. This is not theory. This is not simulation. You will face your fellow cadets in controlled sparring matches using authorized safety equipment. The cadets moved closer, forming a loose semicircle around the instructor. Tyler noticed Shin whispering to a group of his friends, all of them glancing in his direction with expressions that looked almost eager. Kale continued, the exercise is designed to test your tactical thinking, physical capability, and adaptability under pressure. You will be assigned opponents based on random bracket generation. The safety fields will prevent lethal damage but you will feel pain. You will experience the reality of physical combat. A holographic display materialized in the air, showing the bracket structure. Names began populating the slots, species designations glowing beside each one. Tyler watched as his name appeared near the bottom of the bracket. His first match showed 2 opponents instead of 1. That was odd. He glanced at the bracket structure again. Most matches were 1-on-1, but a few showed team scenarios marked with a special symbol. His match had that symbol, but the number next to it read 2v1, rather than the standard 2v2 configuration. Tyler's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked across the room and found Shin watching him with what might have been a smile, though Valkyrie facial expressions were hard to read. Several of Shin's friends were also in the bracket, and their positions seemed strategically placed. The matches will proceed in order, Kale announced. Observers will remain behind the safety barriers. Medical staff are standing by. Remember, this is training but it is also evaluation. Your performance will be recorded and will contribute to your final assessment scores. The first few matches began. Tyler watched carefully, noting how different species fought. The Thernians relied on speed and precise strikes. The Rendathi used their multiple arms for grappling and joint manipulation. The Valkyrie preferred distance fighting, using their long reach to keep opponents away. What struck Tyler most was how carefully everyone fought. They treated pain like something to be avoided at all costs. When a Thernian cadet took a solid hit to the torso, he immediately yielded, clutching his side even though the safety field had absorbed most of the impact. The medical staff rushed in to check for injuries that Tyler suspected weren't serious. These cadets were skilled and well-trained, but they fought like people who had never really been hurt before. They fought like people whose species had evolved on worlds where violence was rare and physical confrontation was almost taboo. Tyler's match was called. He stepped into the combat circle, a designated area marked by glowing lines on the floor. The safety field hummed to life around them, a barely visible shimmer in the air. Across from him, 2 Valkyrie cadets took their positions. One of them was Shin's closest friend, a cadet named Yorn. 2 against 1 seems unfair, Tyler said calmly, looking at Instructor Kale. The scenario is listed as Team Tactical Evaluation, Kale responded, checking his datapad. The parameters are within acceptable ranges for mixed-species training. Tyler noticed Shin and several others watching from the sidelines with barely concealed anticipation. This had been arranged. They wanted to see him humiliated, wanted to prove that humans didn't belong at the academy, that deathworlders were all savagery and no skill. The 2 Valkyrie cadets spread out, trying to flank him. They were confident, moving with the assumption that numbers and reach would give them an easy victory. Around the edges of the combat circle, other cadets gathered to watch. Word had spread quickly that a human was facing 2 opponents. Tyler rolled his shoulders and took a breath. 6 months of keeping his head down, 6 months of ignoring insults and proving himself through academics alone. But this was different. This was physical. This was the kind of test where his Deathworld evolution actually mattered. Instructor Kale raised one of his 4 arms. Combat parameters are set. Safety protocols are active. Begin on my mark. He paused, letting the tension build. Begin. The 2 Valkyrie rushed forward simultaneously. Tyler smiled. Tyler watched the 2 Valkyrie cadets close in from opposite sides. Yorn came from the left, his long arms already reaching out to grab. The other Valkyrie, a female named Iris, circled right, trying to get behind him. Their strategy was obvious and predictable. Surround the target, use superior numbers and reach to overwhelm. Tyler had seen this exact scenario 100 times before. Not here at the academy, but back on Earth in the gym where he'd trained since childhood. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, mixed martial arts. His father had insisted he learn to fight properly, not just throw wild punches like someone in a street brawl. Distance is your enemy when you're smaller, his coach used to say. Get close, control the space, make them fight your fight. Yorn lunged first, his 6 limbs giving him an awkward but quick movement. Tyler didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped forward into the attack, closing the distance that Yorn wanted to maintain. The Valkyrie's eyes widened in surprise. His species almost never moved toward danger. Tyler grabbed Yorn's extended arm at the wrist and elbow, turned his hip and pulled. The throw was textbook, something he'd drilled thousands of times. Yorn's lightweight frame, adapted for his homeworld's lower gravity, flew over Tyler's shoulder and crashed onto the padded floor with a thud that echoed across the training hall. The safety field absorbed some of the impact but not the shock. Yorn gasped, the air driven from his lungs. He'd never been thrown before. His species didn't grapple. They barely touched each other outside of ritual greetings. Iris hesitated, her confidence cracking. Tyler didn't give her time to recover. He moved toward her with quick, measured steps. She backpedaled, trying to maintain distance, but Tyler was faster than she expected. Humans evolved chasing prey across long distances. Short sprints were child's play. He feinted left, she bought it, and he slipped to her right side. A quick leg sweep took her feet out from under her. She hit the ground hard, her limbs tangling in confusion. The watching cadets murmured in surprise. 2 opponents down in less than 30 seconds. Tyler stepped back to the center of the circle, breathing easily. His heart rate was elevated but controlled. This was nothing compared to the full-contact sparring sessions back home where he'd gone rounds against opponents who actually wanted to hurt him. Instructor Kale watched with his 4 arms crossed, his orange face unreadable. He didn't call the match. Instead, he glanced at his datapad and then toward the observation area where Shin stood with his group. Shin made a gesture. Tyler saw it clearly. A signal. 4 more cadets suddenly stepped into the combat circle. The safety field expanded to accommodate them. Tyler's eyes narrowed. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't how the training was supposed to work. Instructor? Tyler called out, not taking his eyes off the new opponents. Scenario evolution, Kale said flatly. Tactical response to changing battlefield conditions. Continue. Tyler understood immediately. This was the real plan. Shin had arranged for multiple waves. If 2 couldn't beat the human, add more. Keep adding until the Deathworlder broke or surrendered. The 4 new opponents were different species. A Rendathi with 4 arms, 2 Thernians with crystalline skin and multiple eyes, and another Valkyrie. They spread out, forming a loose circle around him. Yorn and Iris were climbing to their feet behind them, shaking off their falls. 6 against 1 now. Tyler's muscles tensed, but his mind stayed calm. This was actually better. Multiple opponents meant they'd get in each other's way. They'd hesitate to strike for fear of hitting their own teammates. They'd expect him to panic. He wouldn't. The Rendathi moved first, all 4 arms reaching out to grab and immobilize. Tyler ducked under the top 2 arms and drove his shoulder into the Rendathi's midsection. The alien's body was strong but not braced. Tyler lifted and drove forward, slamming the Rendathi into one of the Thernians. They both went down in a tangle. A strike came from his left. Tyler turned into it, absorbing the blow on his shoulder rather than his head. It hurt, a sharp sting that made his muscle tighten, but pain was information, not a stop sign. His coach's voice echoed in his memory, "Pain tells you you're alive. Fear of pain makes you weak." He grabbed the arm that had struck him, a Thernian's thin limb, and pulled hard while stepping back. The Thernian stumbled forward, off balance. Tyler's elbow came up and caught the alien across the face. Not full force, he didn't want to seriously injure anyone, but hard enough. The Thernian dropped. More cadets entered the circle. Tyler saw them coming from the observation area. Shin was sending everyone he could. The safety field kept expanding. Instructor Kale watched but didn't intervene. 10 aliens now surrounded Tyler. 10 against 1. The watching cadets had gone silent. This wasn't training anymore. This was a spectacle. A test to see if the human would break, would beg, would prove that deathworlders were all muscle and no control. Tyler's breathing deepened. His body shifted into a rhythm he knew well. The gym back home, the smell of sweat and rubber mats, the sound of bodies hitting the ground, the constant motion of sparring with multiple opponents during the advanced classes. "You'll never fight one person in a real situation," his coach had warned. "Fights are chaotic. Multiple threats. No rules. You either stay calm or you die." Tyler wasn't going to die here. He wasn't even going to lose. A Valkyrie rushed from the right. Tyler sidestepped and guided the alien's momentum past him, adding a small trip that sent the Valkyrie crashing into 2 others. They fell like pins. The Rendathi he'd knocked down earlier tried to grab his legs. Tyler sprawled, a wrestling technique that kept his weight distributed and his base stable. The Rendathi couldn't lift him. Tyler spun, broke the grip, and delivered a controlled strike to the Rendathi's shoulder joint. The alien yelped and released him completely. The attacks came faster now, less coordinated. Panic was setting in among the aliens. They'd expected an easy victory. They'd expected the human to be overwhelmed by numbers. Instead, their numbers were working against them. Tyler moved constantly, never staying in one place. He used the aliens' own bodies as shields, positioning himself so they blocked each other's attacks. When he struck, it was precise and painful but not permanently damaging. Joint locks, pressure points, throws that used their own momentum against them. His endurance wasn't flagging. Theirs was. Humans evolved running down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. These aliens came from easier worlds. Their stamina was limited. One by one they hit the ground. Some from throws, some from strikes, some from simple exhaustion and shock. Tyler's hands and feet moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from years of training taking over. 4 minutes after the match began, 10 alien cadets lay on the training floor, groaning, gasping, or simply staring at the ceiling in disbelief. Tyler stood alone in the center of the circle, breathing hard but still upright. Sweat dripped down his face. His muscles burned with exertion. But he was standing. Instructor Kale stared at him for a long moment. Then he raised one arm. Halt. Match concluded. The training hall had gone completely silent. 200 cadets stood frozen behind the safety barriers, staring at the scene inside the combat circle. 10 alien cadets lay scattered across the padded floor in various states of shock and pain. Some clutched injured limbs. Others simply stared at the ceiling, their breathing rapid and shallow. A few were trying to stand but their legs wouldn't cooperate. Tyler Grant stood in the center of it all, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his chin onto the mat below. His training uniform was soaked through. His knuckles were red and slightly swollen. A bruise was already forming on his left shoulder where he'd taken a direct hit. But he was standing. He was conscious. He was ready to continue if needed. Medical staff rushed into the circle, their scanning devices beeping as they moved from one fallen cadet to another. The devices showed elevated stress hormones, minor contusions, a sprained wrist on the Rendathi, hyperventilation in 3 of the Valkyrie. Nothing serious. Nothing permanent. but the psychological impact was written clearly on every alien face. Instructor Kale stepped into the circle, his forearms moving in careful deliberation as he reviewed the data streaming to his pad. His orange skin had darkened slightly, a sign of confusion or concern among Rendathi. He looked at Tyler, then at the defeated cadets, then back at his datapad as if the numbers didn't make sense. Medical assessment, Kale called out. Report status of all participants. The lead medic, a small crystalline being whose species Tyler didn't recognize, responded quickly. 10 cadets with minor injuries. Bruising, strain, shock response. 1 sprained joint. All within acceptable training parameters. No permanent damage detected. The medic paused, then added, the human shows elevated heart rate and core temperature but no injuries requiring intervention. Kale's eyes focused on Tyler. Cadet Grant. Return to the observation area. Tyler nodded and walked toward the edge of the circle. His legs were steady despite the exertion. 4 minutes of intense combat against 10 opponents would have left most humans tired, but Tyler had trained for worse. The weekend sessions at his gym back on Earth sometimes ran 2 hours straight, round after round against fresh opponents who rotated in while he stayed on the mat. As he crossed the glowing boundary line, the other cadets stepped back. It wasn't a conscious movement. It was instinct. The same instinct that made prey animals scatter when a predator approached. They looked at him differently now. The mockery was gone from their eyes, replaced by something else. Fear. A Thernian cadet who had been standing near the barrier actually stumbled backward, tripping over her own feet in her haste to put distance between herself and Tyler. She caught herself on a bench, her 4 eyes wide and unblinking. Tyler grabbed his water bottle from where he'd left it and took a long drink. The cool liquid felt good against his dry throat. He could feel every eye in the room on him. The whispers started, soft at first, then growing in volume. Did you see how fast he moved? 10 of them. 10. He didn't even look tired at the end. The way he kept fighting after taking hits. Like pain didn't matter. Deathworlder, someone whispered, and this time the word carried no insult. Only acknowledgement of a fundamental truth they'd all just witnessed. In the combat circle, the medical staff helped the fallen cadets to their feet. Yorn, the Valkyrie who'd been thrown first, was moving slowly, one hand pressed to his ribs where he'd impacted the mat. Iris, the female Valkyrie, had tears streaming down her face, though whether from pain or humiliation Tyler couldn't tell. The Rendathi cadet with the sprained wrist was arguing with the medic, insisting he could continue training. The medic firmly denied the request and applied a stabilization wrap to the injured joint. Shun stood at the edge of the observation area, his pale blue skin somehow looking even paler than before. He wasn't looking at Tyler. He was staring at his friends, the cadets he'd sent into the circle with such confidence, watching them limp toward the medical station. Instructor Kale raised his voice to address the entire hall. Training is suspended for the remainder of the session. All cadets are dismissed to quarters. Injured cadets will report to the medical wing for full examination. Cadet Grant, remain here. The room emptied quickly. Cadets filed out in small groups, their voices low but animated. Tyler caught fragments of conversation as they passed. I heard humans practice violence as entertainment. Their whole planet is a combat zone. Predators everywhere. They fight each other. For fun. Can you imagine? When the last cadet had left, only Tyler, Instructor Kale, and 2 medical staff remained in the hall. The silence felt heavy. Kale approached Tyler, his forearms crossed in a posture that among Rendathi indicated serious contemplation. Cadet Grant, Kale began, his voice neutral. Explain your combat methodology. Tyler set down his water bottle. Sir, I responded to the scenario as presented. Multiple opponents required efficiency. I used leverage, momentum, and positioning to minimize the advantages their numbers provided. I targeted joints and pressure points to disable without causing permanent harm. I maintained awareness of all threats and controlled the engagement space. Kale's eyes narrowed. You have significant combat training. Yes, sir. Since I was 7 years old. Multiple disciplines. My homeworld considers basic combat proficiency a standard life skill. Your homeworld. Kale repeated the word slowly. You must understand, Cadet Grant, that most species in the Coalition have not engaged in physical combat for thousands of years. War is conducted with technology and strategy at great distance. Personal violence is almost unknown in civilized space. Tyler nodded. I understand, sir. Earth is different. We still fight. We always have. The injuries you inflicted were calculated, Kale observed. You could have caused far more damage but chose not to. Yes, sir. These are my fellow cadets. The objective was to demonstrate capability, not to permanently harm anyone. Cale was silent for a moment, processing. The scenario was modified during execution. Additional opponents were added beyond standard parameters. You are aware this was irregular? Yes, sir. I suspected the match was arranged to test me specifically. And yet you didn't protest. You didn't request intervention. Tyler met the instructor's gaze directly. Sir, if I'm going to serve in the coalition military, I need to prove I can handle situations that aren't fair. The enemy won't fight by academy rules. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered across Cale's face. He uncrossed his arms and pulled out his datapad. The entire engagement was recorded. Multiple angles, full biometric data. I will be submitting this to the Academy Tactical Review Board. Am I in trouble, sir? Cale actually laughed, a clicking sound that seemed almost surprised to emerge from his throat. Trouble? No, Cadet Grant. You followed the rules precisely. Your opponents, however, will be reviewed for scenario manipulation. He paused. But there will be consequences to this demonstration. You've shown the Academy something they weren't prepared to see. What's that, sir? What humans actually are. The conference room overlooked the Academy's central courtyard through floor-to-ceiling windows that provided a view of cadets moving between buildings. Admiral Thorin sat at the head of the long table, her scaled hands folded in front of her. She was a Zaltharian, a species known for strategic thinking and long-term planning. Her yellow eyes moved from one screen to another as the footage of Tyler's fight played on repeat from multiple angles. Around the table sat 5 other high-ranking Academy officials. Instructor Cale stood to one side, his forearms clasped behind his back. The room was silent except for the sounds coming from the screens. The thud of bodies hitting the mat. The gasps of defeated cadets. The systematic, efficient way Tyler moved through his opponents. Play it again, Admiral Thorin said quietly. From the moment the 6th and 7th opponents entered the circle, the footage reset. Everyone watched as Tyler adjusted his position, keeping multiple opponents in his line of sight. He moved constantly, never staying still, using the aliens' own bodies to block attacks from others. When a Thernian tried to strike him from behind, Tyler stepped aside and the blow landed on a Valkyrie instead. He's using them against each other, observed Commander Rolf, a heavy-set Bronchian whose species was known for defensive military tactics. Not just fighting them. Manipulating the entire engagement space. Notice his breathing, added Dr. Shiva, the Academy's chief medical officer and Aquilian with deep purple skin. Elevated but controlled. His species can sustain high-intensity activity far longer than we calculated. The endurance data in human files must be outdated or incomplete. Admiral Thorin paused the footage at the moment Tyler executed a throw that sent 2 cadets tumbling into 3 others. Instructor Cale. Your assessment. Cale stepped forward. Admiral, I have trained cadets for 23 years across 7 coalition worlds. I have never witnessed combat efficiency of this level in a first-year student. Cadet Grant's technique suggests thousands of hours of training. His tactical awareness is exceptional. His pain tolerance is beyond anything I've encountered. Pain tolerance? Thorin asked. Dr. Shiva brought up a biometric display. During the engagement, Cadet Grant sustained 4 direct strikes that should have caused immediate withdrawal based on standard coalition species pain response. He registered the pain, his system acknowledged the impact, but he continued fighting without hesitation. For comparison, when the Valkyrie cadet Yorn was thrown, his pain response triggered a cascade of stress hormones that effectively disabled his ability to continue. The human's response was to simply fight harder. Commander Rolf leaned back in his chair. We've made an error in assessment. A serious one. Explain, Thorin said. We classified humans based on their technology level and social development. We treated them like we treat all new coalition species. We assigned them to standard training protocols. But humans aren't a standard species. They're from a Class 12 death world. We should have anticipated this. Anticipated what, exactly? Asked Dean Vorin, the Academy's academic director, a tall being whose species communicated partially through color changes in their skin. Currently, Vorin's skin showed patterns that indicated confusion and concern. That they're natural soldiers, Rolf said bluntly. Their entire evolutionary history prepared them for exactly this kind of conflict. Look at the data. Earth has higher gravity than 70% of coalition worlds. Humans are physically stronger relative to their size. Their planet is filled with predators that hunt in packs. Humans learned to fight coordinated groups because they had to. It's in their biology. Dr. Shiva added more data to the screens. I pulled the complete Earth file after the incident. Human history is filled with organized warfare. Constant conflict for resources, territory, ideology. They've been fighting each other in increasingly sophisticated ways for their entire recorded history. Most coalition species abandoned physical warfare millennia ago. Humans were still engaged in planetary-scale conflicts when they developed space travel. The room fell silent as the implications settled over everyone. Admiral Thorin finally spoke. How many humans are currently enrolled at the Academy? 3, Instructor Cale replied. Cadet Grant, Cadet Amy Porter, and Cadet Stephen Ward. And their performance in other areas? Dean Voren brought up academic records. All 3 are in the top 15% of their class academically. Cadet Porter specializes in engineering. Cadet Ward in navigation and stellar cartography. Cadet Grant's focus is tactical operations and strategy. They're not just fighters, Thorin observed. They're intelligent, adaptable fighters. That's what concerns me, Commander Rolth said. A species that combines high intelligence with natural combat ability and cultural acceptance of violence. If we'd encountered humans before they joined the coalition, if they'd been hostile? He didn't finish the sentence. Admiral Thorin stood and walked to the window. Below, in the courtyard, she could see cadets gathered in small groups. Word of the fight had spread through the entire academy within hours. What has been the reaction among the student body? Instructor Cale answered. Fear primarily. Avoidance. The cadets who were injured have been treated and released, but several have requested transfers to different training groups. Cadet Shin, who organized the scenario manipulation, has filed a formal complaint claiming Cadet Grant used excessive force. Did he? Thorin asked without turning around. No, Cale said firmly. I reviewed every strike, every throw, every technique. Cadet Grant exercised remarkable restraint. He could have broken bones. He could have caused severe trauma. He did neither. He disabled his opponents with minimum necessary force. Which makes him even more dangerous, Dr. Shiva said quietly. He has the capability for extreme violence but also the control not to use it. That's not instinct. That's training and discipline. Admiral Thorin turned back to the table. Recommendations. Commander Rolth spoke first. We need to revise our training protocols for human cadets. They shouldn't be in standard hand-to-hand combat courses with other species. The risk is too great. Segregation. Dean Voren's skin flashed red, indicating disagreement. That sends the wrong message. The coalition is built on integration and cooperation. I'm not suggesting permanent segregation, Rolth clarified. But in combat training specifically, humans need separate protocols. We can integrate them in tactical studies, leadership courses, technology operations. But physical combat training with non-deathworld species is clearly inappropriate. Dr. Shiva nodded. I agree. From a medical standpoint, the physical disparity is too significant. A training accident could result in serious injury or death to non-human cadets. Admiral Thorin considered this. Instructor Cale, what is Cadet Grant standing among his peers now? He's isolated, Admiral. The other cadets avoid him. The dining hall empties when he enters. Study groups don't invite him. The mockery has stopped, but it's been replaced by fear. And his reaction? He continues his studies, maintains his schedule, shows no outward distress. But I believe the isolation affects him, even if he doesn't show it. Thorin made her decision. Here's what we'll do. Effective immediately, human cadets will have modified combat training protocols. They'll train separately in physical disciplines but remain integrated in all other areas. We'll also initiate a new program where interested cadets can learn basic defensive techniques from our human students on a voluntary basis. You want humans to teach combat? Rolf looked surprised. If we're going to work alongside humans in the coalition military, our officers need to understand their capabilities. Not fear them, understand them. Knowledge reduces fear. Thorin looked at Cale. And it gives Cadet Grant a purpose beyond being the Academy's scary deathworlder. It makes him a resource, not a threat. 3 weeks after the fight, Tyler stood in a smaller training room on the Academy's lower level. The space was designed for specialized instruction, with padded floors and walls lined with safety equipment. 15 cadets sat in a semicircle in front of him, representing 8 different species. They had all volunteered for the new program Admiral Thorin had created. Tyler recognized some of them. A Thernian named Kessa who had always been polite to him in their shared physics class. A young Rendathi called Palin who sat near him in the dining hall once, asking careful questions about Earth. A Velkhori named Mira who had never participated in Shin's mockery. But there were also two cadets who had been in the circle that day. One was Iris, the female Velkhori he had swept to the ground in the first 30 seconds. The other was a Rendathi named Ton who had tried to grab his legs. "Thank you for coming," Tyler began, keeping his voice calm and friendly. "I know some of you might still be uncomfortable after what happened. I want to be clear about something from the start. That day in the combat circle, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to survive a situation that had been rigged against me." Several cadets nodded. Word had spread about Shin's manipulation of the training bracket. Shin himself had been formally reprimanded and assigned additional academic duties as punishment. "Today isn't about fighting," Tyler continued. "It's about understanding. Most of you come from worlds where physical conflict is rare. Where violence is something that happens far away, managed by weapons and technology. Earth isn't like that. On my world, you need to know how to protect yourself because dangerous situations can happen anywhere." Kessa raised one crystalline hand. "Is it true that humans practice combat as entertainment?" Tyler smiled. "Yes. We have sports built around controlled fighting. Boxing, wrestling, martial arts competitions. Millions of people watch these events. Children start training young not because we expect them to fight but because it builds confidence, discipline, and physical fitness." "That seems..." Pollen searched for the right word. "Violent." "It is," Tyler agreed. "But it's controlled violence. Rules, referees, safety equipment. The goal isn't to hurt your opponent. It's to test your skill against theirs. To push yourself and learn your limits." He gestured to the mat. "That's what we'll do here. I'm going to teach you basic defensive techniques. Not how to attack but how to protect yourself if you ever need to. How to fall without getting injured. How to break free if someone grabs you. How to create distance and escape." The cadets looked at each other uncertainly. Finally Iris stood up. "I'll start." Tyler nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Iris. I know that takes courage." She walked onto the mat, her movements careful. Her species was naturally graceful but fragile compared to humans. Tyler could see the nervousness in the way she held her limbs. "The first thing I'm going to teach you is how to fall," Tyler said. "In that fight, several of you were injured not from strikes but from hitting the ground wrong. Your bodies didn't know how to absorb impact." He demonstrated slowly, showing how to tuck the chin round the back and slap the mat with an arm to distribute force. He did it several times, each repetition slower than the last, narrating every movement. "Your turn," he said to Iris. "Just lean back and try to copy what I did. I'll help guide you." Iris attempted the fall. Her form was awkward but she managed to protect her head. When she stood up, there was surprise on her face. "That didn't hurt." "Exactly. Now do it again." For the next hour, Tyler worked with each cadet individually, teaching them the basic breakfall. His corrections were gentle, his demonstrations patient. When Ton struggled with the movement because his forearms made the technique different, Tyler adapted the method specifically for Rendathi anatomy. "See," Tyler said. "Combat techniques aren't just about hurting people. They're about understanding how bodies move, how force transfers, how to work with your physiology instead of against it." In the following sessions over the next weeks, Tyler introduced more concepts. How to recognize threatening situations before they escalate. How to use verbal de-escalation. How to position your body to communicate non-aggression while maintaining the ability to defend yourself. "On Earth we have a saying," Tyler told the class during the fourth session. "The best fight is the one you avoid." Real self-defense isn't about winning battles. It's about not having to fight at all. Kessa found this fascinating. "But you're so skilled at combat. Don't you want to use those skills?" Tyler shook his head. "Every time I fight there's a risk of injury. To me or to others. Training is about building capability, not looking for opportunities to use it. I train so I'm prepared if I need to be. I hope I never need to be." The classes grew. More cadets joined. Some came out of curiosity, others out of a genuine desire to learn. Tyler taught them all with the same patience and respect. He learned to modify techniques for different body types, different gravity adaptations, different skeletal structures. Word reached the instructors. Some came to observe. Instructor Kale attended several sessions, watching quietly from the side. After one class he approached Tyler. "You're a natural teacher," Kale said. "You could pursue instruction as a specialty after graduation." Tyler hadn't considered that. "I thought I'd go into tactical operations." "You could do both. The coalition needs officers who understand humans. Who better to teach them than a human who understands the coalition? Admiral Thorin herself attended a session near the end of the semester. She watched Tyler work with a mixed group of cadets, correcting form, encouraging effort, and maintaining an atmosphere of respect and safety. After the class ended, she asked to speak with him privately. "Cadet Grant, I've been reviewing reports on your teaching program. The feedback is overwhelmingly positive. Cadets report feeling more confident, more capable, and importantly less afraid." "That's good to hear, Admiral. I'm authorizing the expansion of this program. Next semester, it will be offered as an official elective course. You'll be the primary instructor with Instructor Kale supervising." Tyler stood straighter. "I'm honored, Admiral. You've done something important here," Thorin continued. "You've taken a situation that could have created permanent division and turned it into an opportunity for understanding. The cadets don't fear humans anymore. They respect you. There's a difference. I just wanted them to understand that strength isn't about domination. It's about protection. Capability without cruelty." Thorin's expression softened. "That's a very human perspective. And perhaps one the coalition needs to learn." The semester ended with a demonstration. Tyler's students performed the techniques they'd learned in front of the entire academy. Parents and officials from across coalition space attended. They watched as cadets from fragile species executed breakfalls, escapes, and defensive maneuvers with confidence. The audience applauded. But Tyler noticed something more important. His students were smiling. They were proud of what they'd accomplished. After the demonstration, Iris approached him. "Thank you," she said simply. "I was terrified of you after that fight. Now I understand. You weren't a monster. You were just prepared for something we weren't." "And now you're prepared too," Tyler replied. She nodded. "Now I'm prepared too." As Tyler walked back to his quarters that evening, he passed groups of cadets who nodded to him in greeting. No one avoided him anymore. No one whispered "deathworlder" like an insult. He thought about his father's words before he left Earth. "Show them what humans really are. Not what they fear we are." He had done that. Not through domination or fear, but through patience, teaching, and respect. Tyler smiled. He had found his place at the academy. Not as the scary human from the death world, but as someone who could bridge the gap between species through understanding. And that, he realized, was more important than any fight he could ever win.